Hi, my name is Andy Peake, and I am creating this video in my studio, Big Little Recording, here in Nashville, Tennessee. It's a beginning perspective on studio drumming for those who have never experienced it, and a comparative experience for those who have. Very briefly, I began playing drums in my high school music program and discovered I was better at music than any of my other subjects, and ended up following the path of least resistance to this point in my life and career. As is true with many working musicians, I have played in thousands of venues and on thousands of recordings, which I am mentioning only to suggest I may have picked up a few things along the way that have kept me in the game. Now, people outside the music business have occasionally said to me, "Oh, I hope you make it in the music business." The reality is, if you make a living or even continue to make music for yourself and others, you have made it in the music business. As a baseball player, you may make the headlines for your achievements from your most recent time at bat. However, you stay on the team because of your batting average and your continuing performance. Same deal with being a musician. There are many brilliant drummers in the world. Some are technically great, some are musically great. The best have at least some of both qualities. There are also other factors for success. I am fortunate enough to know many great musicians and am friends with quite a few. There's a brilliant bass player in Nashville with credits a mile long named Michael Rhodes. Early on in Nashville, I asked Michael why a drummer I had seen whose talent seemed not much greater than mine was at the top of the work ladder while I was a few rungs down. Michael graciously and simply replied, "He really knows how to work the room." His point being that in addition to technique and even musicality, your demeanor, respect for others, attitude, knowledge, and enthusiasm all make a difference in people wanting to work with you. As working musicians, as well as other occupations, we must ask ourselves regularly, would I want to work with me? This is so important since there are no HR departments and very few written resumes in the music business. There are other things that ring the bell of success as a musician. The air gets thin at the top, so attention to detail without being OCD is critical. I also seem to have my best days when I've been practicing concentration and retention. Stopping the recording more than once because of our mistakes from a wandering mind is too often a next man or next woman up scenario. There was a great basketball player known a few years back by the name of Allen Iverson. He had a lot of great quotes. My favorite Allen Iverson quote is, "Practice? We talking about practice?" I personally have always enjoyed performing more than practicing, but practicing is also experiential with an ensemble, not just sitting in front of a methods book. So I have personally pursued the path of being technically solid while putting a lot of emphasis on thinking like a musician, not just a drummer. I love many kinds of music, from Broadway to bop to John Bonham. I love lyrical, harmonic, melodic music that merged in North America beginning in the middle of the 20th century. That encompasses 40s swing, 50s roots rock, the British invasion beginning mid-60s, and everything since. If you ask me my favorite artist musician, I would answer Little Richard, Dave Brubeck, Ray Charles, the Beach Boys, the Beatles, Wilson Pickett, Al Green, the Temptations, the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, the Eagles, James Brown, Freddie King, Little Feat, Steely Dan, Bonnie Raitt at Bad Company, Talking Heads, the Allman Brothers Band, and anything from that point on that emphasized rhythm in their music. I'm sure you have your own list. Now, being from Nashville since 1987, I gained an affection and respect for a lot of country music and its branches. I didn't grow up on it, but I take pride in my now relative grasp of the song forms that are prominent in modern and classic country music and how drums relate to country music. Also, although I am not lost on the art of music sequencing, I am and will always be a live music fan. So this video will concentrate for now on live drumming within today's creative environment. Now let's dig into the pulse of modern music. Let's talk about what we do as drummers in modern music in the recording studio. Recording can be thought of like a picture. Some are created with an image in mind, like graphic art for a commercial. Some is strictly art for art's sake. Some are recorded one instrument at a time, and some are with an ensemble or band, all or mostly at the same time. There are all sorts of areas in between these techniques also. A drummer in modern recorded pop music is a glorified metronome. As you probably know, he or she enhances or creates the pulse for the most dynamic song forms. Another instrument or even a vocalist can create the pulse, but drums and percussion can really draw attention to or bolster the pulse of music. We can stimulate your senses or really make you want to shake your body. Some modern drumming recording is done with a metronome or click track guide, and some is left up to the internal clock of the drummer or other musicians. That can be a pleasure or a harrowing experience depending on the musician who is driving the vehicle, since the goal of professional is creativity and precision. Today we will record a song using a click track. The click track is like a road map. It has a start point and an end point, and sonically shows us every cross street as we pass it. Our job is to remain as steady as possible while we drive the road and act as a tour guide with sonic commentary about the scenery as we drive. This drum kit is bass drum, snare drum, hi-hat, 3 tom-toms, 2 crash cymbals, and a ride cymbal. We'll save the specifics of these drums for another episode. For today's recording, every drum has a microphone on it with a second mic on the snare drum bottom and a room ambience mic overhead about 10 feet. In this situation, there are lyrics and melody provided by the writer and pre-recorded guide tracks with the song form provided by the writer and bass player. Our singer-songwriter today is the brilliant veteran writer and musician John Prestia. John's a good old friend of mine. He's written a lot of great stuff. He was a co-writer of a song called No One to Run With. There was a title track for the Allman Brothers that he wrote with Dickie Betts. He's had a lot of songs recorded by himself and other people. On bass, my friend, originally from Connecticut by way of New York City and now in good old Nashville, former member of the Saturday Night Live staff band, and he's played bass for people like for people like Levon Helm, and a lot of other people. His name is Paul Asola. You will hear the guitar and voice of John and the bass of Paul Asola. Now, what the drums play is determined in this instance by my drummer's intuition. I've heard and studied the song before we start to record. The studio musician's composition is also a big factor in whether I or we get hired again to record in the studio. I'll play a little bit of the song without drums but with a click track. Then record the drums with click, then play it back without click so you can hear the approximate end product. One thing to think about as we go through here, the click track will be loud. When I play the drums, I have to be able to hear the click track above everything else. So you will hear the mix with the click track turned up pretty loud as I'm playing with it. I have to try and stay with the click track, even though the other instruments may waver slightly ahead or behind. And I'll make the call as I go as to whether I'm staying with it or not. So take a listen, see what you think. I'm going to play a little bit of the song without drums first so you can get a feel for what I received before I started playing the drums. Here we go. Oh, wait a second. Let's put it in record so you can't hear the drums. Here we go. Here we go.
1, 2, 3.
I'll be out here. And I'll enter here.
Little Nicky got in trouble just the other day. Had $1,000 in his hands and let it slip away. races. He blew it real fast. Spent his last $20 on a nag that finished last for a small time.
Drums will be in here. Full drums.
Big deal.
Playing with that click.
Oh, it's a short life, little Nicky. Now get real.
Back to the intro. Okay, so I'm going to rewind it here. Keep the click on and turn off this talkback mic, and we're going to play the drums and record them with this track. Okay. Erasing the drums track that we just recorded. Going back to the beginning of the song. Keep the click on. Turn off the talkback mic. Is it off? Yes, it is. Here we go. Wish me luck.
1, 2, 3. Little Nicky got in trouble just the other day. Had $1,000 in his hands and let it slip away. He took it to the races. He blew it real fast. Spent his last $20 on a nag that finished last for a small time. Big deal. Oh, it's a short life, little Nicky. Now get real. Pretty little Jean, he waited patiently at home. When he didn't show for dinner, she knew what he had done. Instead of taking care of business, people that he owed, he took his self-respect, Lord, he sold it down the road for a small time. Big deal. Ooh, it's a short life, little Nicky. Now get real. Now ain't it funny how a little money in the wrong hands make greedy little piggies that are really good men? If there is a silver lining behind the black cloud, they'll let the rain drown them, trying to get it down for a small time. Big deal. It's a short life, little Nicky. Now get real. A small time. Big deal. It's a short life, little Nicky. Now get real. Hey, it's a short life, little Nicky. Oh, get real. Hey, short life, little Nicky. Oh, now get real.
Let's see how we did. Okay? I'm going to rewind it. I'm going to take the click out and we'll listen to it to see how musical it is at this point. Did I stay with the click close enough and yet make it musical? Let's find out. Here we go. Back to the beginning. Take the click out. All right. Cross your fingers, Andy. Wish me luck.
1, 2, 3. Little Nicky got in trouble just the other day. Had $1,000 in his hands and let it slip away. He took it to the races. He blew it real fast. Spent his last $20 on a nag that finished last for a small big deal. Ooh, it's a short life, little Nicky. Now get real. Pretty little Jean waited patiently at home. When he didn't show for dinner, she knew what he had done. Instead of taking care of business, people that he owed, he took his self-respect, Lord, he sold it down the road for a small time.
Drums supporting the lyric at that spot, trying to be musical.
It's a short
Notice all my snare drum hits are pretty uniform.
now get real.
Place that backbeat in there. So, let's rock.
Now ain't it funny how a little money in the wrong hands make greedy little piggies that are really good men? If there is a silver lining behind the black cloud, don't let the rain drown 'em trying to get it down for a small time. Big deal. It's a short life, little Nicky. Now get real. A small time. Big deal. It's a short life, little Nicky. Now get real. Hey, it's a short life, little Nicky. Oh, get real. Hey, a short life, little Nicky. Oh, now get real.
Okay. Couple of quick things about playing with the click. When you listen back and if the rest of the band, it sounds like the drums are behind the rest of the band. Sometimes you got to solo the drums up with the click. And if the guitars are too far ahead, then you got to go back in and pull them back, because the drums have to make a choice between playing with the other instruments or playing with the click. And if the guitars are recorded ahead of the click, and it comes to me that way, I got to make a choice at that point. And generally, the guitars can come back and fix more easily than I can. If I try and play to the guitars, it could just throw the whole thing off. So I have to favor the click when I'm playing. Another thing is when you're playing a fill, you got to come out dead on the downbeat. And there was one spot near the end there that was a little bit shaky for me. So I probably would either fix that or re-record the track because of that. We can listen to it a couple of times. We'll see. Anyway, so that's what you're up against. And it's always fun. It's always challenging. And I hope it's educational and interesting for you. Just wanted to say, if you've stayed with me to this point, thank you. For the newcomers, if you liked what you heard, let me know. I'd be glad to hear from you. And for the veteran musicians, if you found this redundant, well, I hope there was something in there that you could get out of it. And in the meantime, y'all take care, be safe, and thanks for taking a watch and a listen.